Good afternoon. I hope you can... Oh, there we go, I'm back. I'm on now. Great day out. I hope you've all had a chance to get out and have a wander around and get a breath of fresh air. It's lovely out there. Over the next, 30 minutes or so, I'm hoping to entertain the notion that maybe breaking the rules or possibly bending the rules a little bit can actually lead to positive outcomes for not just your team, but the customer, and overall, your organisation. So about 8 years ago, no, it wasn't 8 years ago, 8 months ago, I was in an ANZ branch in Brisbane, and I was at the foreign exchange desk with my ANZ travel card, and I'm an ANZ customer, and I was number 43, apparently. I'd taken my little dispenser, I waited patiently to get called up. I was a bit like an RSL on a Saturday night waiting for my chicken palmy. And I get called up and I said, I'd just like to transfer $300 cash from my check account into my ANZ travel card. And the girl behind the counter looked at me and said, I'm sorry, the computer says no. And I said, surely I've got money in my account. She goes, yeah, you do, but I'm not allowed to do that any longer. But why? I've always done that. Every 6 months when I have to travel, I come to this branch, I come to the Foreign Exchange Currency Bureau and I take out some foreign currency and you guys transfer some cash into my card for me. And they said it's a new policy. New policy says we can't do that any longer. It's now a customer-directed service that you can do it yourself. Now I get that from a business perspective because there'd be a bean counter somewhere in Melbourne that's looked at all the transactions the bank does, and it's looked at the value-creating transactions. So I take out a mortgage or a home loan, or I apply for a credit card. Those types of transactions create real value. Transferring funds from one account to another for a customer onto a travel card doesn't create any value. And they've simply looked at how many times that transaction is asked for within a bank. They've extrapolated that across the days and the amount of branches they have, and they've gone, I can save the business a couple of $100,000s in wages by removing that transaction and forcing it back to the consumer, despite the fact it's going to create potentially a bad experience. So naturally I said, I'd like to speak to your branch manager, please. And the branch manager comes out, and I swear to God, he says, what's the problem, mate? Which is great if you're standing in a bar, but not so good if you're standing in a bank branch. So I said, listen, it's not a problem. All I'm hoping to do is get $300 transferred from my account onto my travel card like I've always done. And he says, we don't do that any longer, sir, there's a new policy. And I said, that's what she said. Can somebody please help me? And he said, listen, it's not a problem. All you do is you go to www.anz.com.au/travel cards. You go to the drop-down menu and on he went for about 5 minutes. And I said, listen, I'm really confused. Surely somebody can help me in the branch. I've been waiting patiently, and look, I'm number 43. And he literally says, I'll get someone for you. And off he walks. So somebody comes out and helps me. And while this is going on, this 20-minute sort of discussion about, please, can someone help me do this? And if you can show me the first time, I won't bother you again, ever again. I kept looking at this. No, they don't. They've got no idea what I'm going through. I'm busy. I'm on my lunch break. It's the first time this has happened to me after many years of being an ANZ customer. And it wasn't a great experience. It wasn't a great experience for me. It wasn't a great experience for the poor bank teller, nor the store manager, or the third team member that came out and helped me. Sometime later, I'm on a Qantas flight, and I'm flying back from Hobart to Brisbane. And I'm sitting beside a guy beside me, and the cart's coming down the aisle, and the flight attendant says, would you like any wine or any drinks with your meal? And he said, yeah, I'll have a bottle of wine. And she says, that's $7. And he did that little Macarena dance you do when you can't find your wallet. You know that? Now, where is it? And he said, oh, wait, hang on. It's in my bag, which is in the overhead locker. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. I'll just have water. And she says, listen, it's okay. This one's on the house. And gives him a free bottle of wine. Now, do you think I could shut him up for the next 30 minutes? This is the best airline in the world. When I land, I'm sending Alan Joyce a direct email about how amazing this particular person was. I'm never flying with anybody else other than Qantas ever again. This is the most amazing experience I've ever had. Now, when you think about those two customer interactions with two team members, suitably qualified, well-trained team members, front-facing the customer, team member A, the bank teller, was following the rules. She's been given rules to apply. This transaction can no longer take place. It's a self-directed transaction. Team member B, the flight attendant, deviated from the rules. She didn't follow the rules, she broke the rules, she gave away a free product to a customer, but it led to a great experience. We call this customer-orientated positive deviance. So the actions of a team member that deviate away or move away from the norms of the company, of the policies or the procedures, in order to attain a positive or favourable outcome for potentially the customer, first up, also to some extent themselves, and overall the organisation. You think about that Qantas experience. The team member felt great because she helped a customer. The customer felt fabulous because he had a bottle of wine and it didn't cost him anything. And overall, it created great value for the brand. So this is very much about breaking the rules, or at least bending them and allowing your team members to do that. When we think about deviance, though, we think about this. We think about our team members coming to work and sitting there on Facebook, or having long lunch breaks, or slipping out for a smoke break every 90 minutes. Or worst case scenario, they're coming in and they're stealing stationery or damaging assets. But deviant behaviour can also be positive. We can actually move away from the rules, or the procedures, or the policies to actually create a positive experience for a customer. So it's not as easy as just saying, well, listen, we'll start a rule on Monday, and the rule is that there's no more rules and we can just do whatever we want, and that will make everybody happy, including our team members, and the organisation will flourish and we'll make lots of money and life will be great. Because ultimately we need rules. So organisations need rules because we measure stuff. And I was listening to some of the speakers today looking at data and big data and how much gets measured. And I was in a McDonald's recently, and if you've been into a McDonald's and you have a look at there's a little monitor above the drive-through, and it indicates sort of the service times. I just was listening to Domino's talking about their delivery times. So we have to have some form of rules and guidelines that measures things. And I can see which stores are tracking quite well because those stores are in green and there's some in orange that says they're just outside the mean. And then certainly we've got a couple in red at the bottom. It's usually the McDonald's that I'm standing in at the time waiting to get served. So organisations need rules. We can't just throw all the rules out. Interestingly enough, team members need rules as well because they want to be doing the right thing. They don't want to get into trouble. When somebody walks up with a product and they don't have a receipt and it's damaged, they want to know what's the procedure for a return without a receipt. Or I walk into a branch at a bank and I want to transfer funds from my savings account across to my travel card. I know the rules say it's supposed to be a customer-directed service now, but can I bend the rules a little bit? So there's this fear that we might make the wrong decision. So even team members need rules. And more importantly, we need rules. We want that same consistent experience when we go from different branches, different brands, different airlines, different banks. With rules, we get that consistency. So we're also looking from that from a consumer's point of view. So it's a little bit difficult, isn't it? In one place we're saying, if we look at the experience of the Qantas flight attendant who broke the rules and created a fabulous experience versus the bank teller that didn't break the rules and actually created a very negative experience. So I guess the question is, how do we go about getting our teams to break the rules? Or how do we get them to bend the rules in some way to create a positive experience, not just for themselves and the organisation, but more importantly, our customers? So I love this saying. It really sort of speaks to empowering our team. So people don't learn anything by being told. They need to find out for themselves or ultimately do it themselves. And I'll give you an example. I used to run supermarkets for Coles and some big supermarkets. And I had a deli manager come to see me one day in my office and said, listen, I'm going home at 5 o'clock. The 5 o'clock starter hasn't started. The 6 o'clock starter's not coming in until 6 o'clock. What should I do? And I could have told her what to do, and then next week I would have had the same discussion, and the week after that I would have had the same discussion. So I said, well, what do you think we should do? She said, well, listen, I guess I could stay back for the hour until the 6 o'clock starter starts, but it'll cost overtime. That's $17.50. And we're not allowed to have overtime because the rules are we have to ring regional office and approve any extra overtime. Wages are tight. Or I could get the person in the fruit department to go across and work in the deli department just for an hour. But hang on, they haven't done the safe work practices, so I'm breaking the rules. Or I could ring the team member that starts at 6 o'clock and get him to come in at 5 o'clock, or at least a little bit earlier. But I'm breaking the rules because I'm changing time sheets, and that might mean he gets a tea break because he's working a 5-hour shift, not a 4-hour shift, which he was originally rostered for. So all of the decisions she's thinking about, she's realising she's going to have to break one rule. And I said, well, listen, no one's going to get injured. The business isn't going to close because we spent $17.50 on overtime. And what you're going to do is actually achieve this goal. This goal that you have is that how am I going to fix this problem of this gap in my service and staffing in the deli department? You've come up with 3 amazing options. Pick one. It won't cause any harm. And off she went and did that and never heard from her again. She was fabulous, great team member, because she had to do it herself rather than being told. So the discussion is now moving away from customer experience, although even today I still talk about customer experiences, and I read manuscripts and articles on how do we create positive, relevant customer experiences. But the dialogue that's emerging is around employee experience and understanding that employees are not just, I guess, a cost on our P&L statements, but in fact a very important conduit between our organisation and our customer. And if we empower our team to be flexible, maybe bend the rules a little bit, they can actually create positive, relevant customer experiences for our customer. But it's difficult because often we put these barriers, these mountain-sized barriers around these teams that don't allow them to be flexible. And I look at that example of that particular branch, the ANZ branch, and that team member could have created a very positive experience for myself. She would have got great a great experience out of it, as would the brand. But instead it was a negative experience, possibly because she was constrained. And maybe it was just the culture of that branch, or maybe it was the culture of the region or the state, or maybe not the entire brand and not nationally. But something had gone wrong. So this team member was living in fear that if they went across, broke the rule or breached the policy or breached the procedure, she was going to get into trouble. Potentially the store manager or the branch manager may have lived with that same situation. I can't get my team to be flexible and empower my team because I'm a young branch manager and I actually feel that I need to control everything that happens in this branch. I'm now sort of hypothesising what might be happening in that particular branch. But this team member could have added real value to that experience, but just wasn't able to. So what I'm going to suggest to you over the next little while is we're going to look at the notion of hope. And rather than give team members rules to follow or rules not to follow, but in fact encourage them to be hopeful in the workplace. And employee hope offers some real interesting insight into how employees go about achieving their goals for themselves, their organisation, and their customers' goals. And a couple of colleagues of mine, one in the University of New England in Armidale and a couple in Hobart, University of Tasmania, have been looking at this. We've currently got a manuscript under review at the International Journal of Human Resource Management. I'll show you the model at the end of this presentation about how hope is actually creating positive impacts for team members and employees and brands. So what we want to be, I guess, entertaining the notion of is, can we get our team members to hope that by bending the rules a little bit, they actually can create great opportunities for the teams, for customers, and for the brand. So why inspire hope? We did some studies, and what I'm going to show you now is academic studies and citations about the impact of actually having hopeful, optimistic team members. Hope reduces emotional exhaustion, so it's been demonstrated. So when we talk about emotional exhaustion, you know those days where you have spent the entire week putting out fires and constantly reflecting on policies and procedures. So the phone rings and there's an issue and I have to refer to this policy or this procedure or this guideline. And by the end of the week, you're completely exhausted. You just want to go home. You don't want to engage with the family. Having hope to think that, gee, things are going to get better. I can actually take a flexible response to the challenges that I'm facing, reduces this emotional distress. It improves job performance and commitment. I think about that bank teller. She's not committed to the job. She's not enjoying it. She's not enjoying standing there every day, 5 days a week, and having to tell customers, I'm sorry, we don't do that transaction anymore. There's been a policy change. You have to do it yourself. And then having to call the branch manager, and the branch manager is certainly not committed because he's sick of customers complaining as well. If they had hope, they would hopefully ring national office and provide feedback and say, hopefully this policy will go, because it's not a great policy. It increases healthy behaviours. When we're hopeful, we come home and we don't sit there and sort of have a couple of glasses of wine and have a couple of cigarettes and worry about how awful our week has been. We put our joggers on and go for a walk, or we go for a run. It facilitates conflict resolution. Hope facilitates conflict resolution. Think about the times you've been in a tea room and listening to the discussion around the admin department. They're completely hopeless. It's hopeless talking to them because they don't get us. Or it's hopeless having a conversation with the boss because they don't understand. The branch manager going, yes, I know this is an awful policy and I know it's frustrating for customers, but it's hopeless. We can't fix this problem. It's positively related to employees' mental health. So very much like that emotional exhaustion. Satisfaction, retention, performance, self-efficacy and optimism. If I think about my deli manager many years ago who came to see me, probably wasn't confident in being able to make those decisions, but allowing her to make those decisions improved her confidence, improved her abilities in management and leadership, thinking, well, listen, I need to make a decision on the run. I could go and consult with 15 people, or I can just bring the guy in a bit early. And what's it going to cost me? $17.50? My business turns over several hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. So this isn't going to be a problem. And I can fix the problem and I can do it myself. So suddenly my self-efficacy, my confidence increases. Improves workplace behaviour. Yep. Suddenly we're all working together because we're hopeful for a positive outcome. So there's some real benefits of hope and inspiring hope in our team, rather than simply giving them rules. So hope achieves goals. Sometimes when you're thinking, I'm going to go for a run, and you go, my goal is I'm going to achieve a 5K run in under 30 minutes, so I've got a PB in my mind. If I'm hopeful that I'm going to achieve that PB, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep running until I get to that PB. So my goal is achieve a 5K run under 30 minutes, and I'm hopeful that I'm going to achieve it. My goal is I'm going to talk to my branch manager about this awful policy, and hopefully it will change. If I'm not hopeful, I'm not even going to attempt to go for a run, because there's no way I'm going to run 5Ks in under 30 minutes. If I'm not hopeful, I'm not going to talk to my branch manager. But hope is somewhat complex. We need a couple of things in place to achieve hope, or at least inspire our team to have hope. And I guess that's where you guys come in, as leaders and as managers. Team members need pathways, and they need motivation, or what we also refer to as agency. So they need pathways and agency. So let's have a little look at those. If you don't give people pathways, there's no hope that they will actually achieve anything. So in the case of the bank, if there's no facility to feed back concerns to corporate office, team members aren't going to even attempt to do it. If I look at my deli manager, I gave her pathways, but I didn't tell her what to do. I said, well, listen, let's come up with 2 or 3 solutions, 2 or 3 pathways, and encourage them to believe in their ability. So at the end after we've discussed those 3 alternatives, I said, listen, pick any of them, because I think they're all fantastic ideas, and she did. Team members also need agency and motivation. It's great to say, here's your goal, and your goal is to fix a service issue which is currently happening in your department. Here's a couple of options, but if there's no motivation to do it, they're not going to follow any option. So maybe that motivation is Employee of the Month. Maybe that motivation is a mystery shopper result. Maybe that motivation is financial. So I've walked through your department, the department looks fabulous, service is great, so you get, a bonus in your pay packet at the end of the week. So there does need to be, I guess, a carrot, but also some pathways, and that's where we come in as leaders and managers to sort of guide our teams through this. But we're not going to tell our teams how to do it. We're going to give them, I guess, the ability and the flexibility to think about the rules that they're facing or the guidelines and move around them. This is the study that we undertook. So bear with me as I go through this a little bit. So we interviewed and surveyed about 520-odd frontline service team members. They worked in hospitality, they worked in retail, they worked in restaurants, they worked in a number of, I guess, areas. And we looked at situational hope or state hope rather than trait hope. So trait hope is you are innately hopeful all the time no matter what context you're in. So you're on the golf course and you're hopeful that you're going to get a great round in. You're at work and you're hopeful that you're going to have a positive outcome today. You're driving in your car and you're hopeful that you're not going to get a speeding ticket. You're hopeful all the time. Those types of people are somewhat anomalies. We looked at situational hope. So at points in time, people can be hopeful or they can be less hopeful. So on the golf course, I'm generally less hopeful I'm going to get round okay. But in a lecture situation, I'm generally hopeful that it's going to be a good lecture and my students are going to enjoy it. So we looked at state hope and we measured on a psychometric scale employee hope. And we found that team members that were hopeful had a higher propensity to engage in customer-directed positive deviance. They were more likely to move away from the rules in order to create a positive impact or a positive experience for their team, for their customers and for their organisation. What we also found about customer-orientated positive deviance is that those team members that engaged in this practice felt that they were achieving the employees' goals, their own personal goals. And their own personal goals could have been something as simple as, I want to walk out of the office today thinking I've had a great day and I've made my customers happy. So they felt there was a positive impact in relation to that. The other one was their perceptions of the organisation that they were working for. So they worked in an organisation that allowed them to be flexible in their responses to customers, and they had a positive perception of that organisation. So it was really interesting to see how the impact of just allowing teams to be flexible, bend the rules, creates great outcomes for themselves, their customers, but also the organisation. So how can we inspire hope? Because that's the next sort of part of this presentation. Well, the first one is we need to connect our individual goals to the organisational objectives. Easier said than done. A little bit of homework for next week when you get back into the office. I've looked at a number of, I guess, vision and mission statements, corporate vision and mission statements and organisational objectives. And then I look at people's performance appraisal documents. And often I see this disconnect between the organisational goals and what we're measuring our team members on. Now, I don't know if that's happening in your organisation, or maybe you know of organisations like that. But maybe one of the organisational goals is return a positive ROI to our shareholders. Okay, I got that. But then we measure, what are we measuring with our team? Are they friendly and smiling? Do they have a name badge on? Are they well presented? We look at their mystery shopper results and we say, oh, listen, mystery shopper result was 85, that's great. Now, in some ways they're connected to ROI, but we probably haven't explained that to the team. So how do we inspire hope? If we can get our team to understand that the things that they do really matter to the organisation, they're going to want to come to work every day and engage in this experience. Show employees that they're active partners in setting organisational goals. So connect with them. Again, another little bit of homework. Next time you do a corporate day or a strategy day, how many team members have you got in that audience? How many team members are you listening to their voices? So I work with a really large organisation, QUT, and every year we have a strategy day in the business school and we bring all the academics together, we bring in experts. We bring in experts from outside on sort of teaching and pedagogy. We look at how do we change the way we deliver content to students? How do we blend our learning from in-store, in class, in lecture and digitalisation of content? And we're having these amazing strategy days. We're setting goals for ourselves, but the only voice we're actually not listening to is our student. So the student's not a part of the goal setting. Is your team members a part of some of your organisational goal setting? Are we clearly articulating to our teams how their role helps achieve organisational goals? The other one, and it's a little bit more challenging, and I'll talk to you about Lululemon next, incorporate employees' personal interests into their professional goals. So this is Lululemon. Lululemon sells athleisure wear. They do a lot of stuff around yoga and running and fitness. They have gone out to identify and recruit people who are actively into yoga, fitness, CrossFit, health and wellbeing. During the week, in some of their stores, certainly the CBD stores, they do free yoga. So I was walking through the Queen Street Mall about 6 or 7 months ago, and all the stores were closing at sort of 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night, except out the front of Lululemon, where there was a line of customers with their rolled up yoga mats all heading in. So what they've done is they've got team members in there that are simply sales assistants, but they're also passionate about yoga. They're trained yoga teachers, and that's what they do part-time, and they go to yoga classes. So they do a free yoga class for their customers. So office workers are now leaving their offices at the end of the day and heading out and joining in at Lululemon. So a really interesting way that we're seeing organisations take an employee's personal interests and say, well, listen, one of your goals is to sell more stuff, particularly yoga mats and yoga gear. How might you be able to do this? Let's bring some of your personal interests into the store and share some of those insights. So we're really connecting with our team. Oops, let's go back one more. Conceptualise reasonable goals. Like I said, I used to work for Coles many years ago. It was a very big store. One of the last stores I ran was one at Toowong. It used to do $1.2 million a week. So a lot of staff. And when I'd sit with my management team at the start of the year and say, here's the new budget for FY19, we need to find another $6.5 million this year. I'm getting a little time out. And we'd end up with $6.5 million. And you could see eyes glaze over, and straight away people weren't hopeful that they were going to achieve that. So they would sort of go, I don't think we're going to get 6.5 million on top of what we're already doing. But when we conceptualise it and break those goals down a little bit, we actually got a better response, a more positive response. So we said, well, listen, across the given weeks and days and hours and departments, it really is only a couple of $100 per hour more that we need to find. And in a big store like this, of course, we can find it. Provide them with numerous pathways. So a bit like the deli manager that came in, I could have told her what to do and she would have gone off and done exactly what I've asked her to do. And then next week she would have come in and asked the same question. But instead we talked about a different way to do it. We gave them a number of different pathways and off they went and did it. And reframe obstacles as challenges to overcome. So, okay, listen, the policy says we can no longer do a transfer between a customer's account to their ANZ travel card. But that's not an obstacle. What can we do to get around it? How can we fix that problem? I did want to just share with you some context. And I was listening to some of the speakers beforehand about safety and things like that. There's some rules that can't be broken. So I go into my bank and I only have 80 points of ID. I can't go, listen, it's pretty close to 100 points. Can I open a new bank account? And I can't go to my pharmacy with a prescription that's 4 weeks out of date and say, well, listen, it is me. Do you mind filling it? I know it's 4 weeks out of date. So there's certain things that we can't break. But most rules we can probably look at and listen to our teams and understand, probably from a team's perspective, which ones are actually adding value to my business, which types of rules are being put in place, not to reduce costs, but actually create positive experiences. So I've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm happy to take questions from the audience about breaking the rules, or how do we facilitate an environment where our teams feel safe and confident enough to break rules to create positive experiences for their customers, for themselves, and certainly for the organisation. Thanks, guys.